Welcome to the Gynergy Effect, where energy meets intention and transformation begins.
We're your hosts, Garin and Yesi, partners in life, love, and purpose.
Here to share the tools, truth, and stories that helped us build a life from the inside out.
Whether you're seeking deeper health, conscious relationships, or your next level of purpose,
you're in the right place. Welcome back to the Gynergy Effect. We are so excited to see you back here again. Thank you for spending time with us. We're very grateful. I'm your host, Garin, and we have
Yesi here.
So we have a great episode today, Yesi, my dear, my beloved. Why don't we drop a little bit of information, a little hint on what we're talking about today?
Today's episode is on one of the most important decisions that we have made in our lives in this year, and that is to stop drinking. So this episode is all about why we decided to stop drinking, what was the inspiration behind the decision, and what has changed for us physically, mentally, emotionally, in our relationships since we stopped drinking.
Also, I would say spiritually.
And spiritually, yeah. Right. And also provide some guidance to what are the questions you should be asking yourself if it's something that you're either thinking about or if you're going through that journey yourself already.
I think a lot of people, when they hear, oh, stop drinking, well, was there a problem? Did you hit rock bottom? Why did you stop drinking? I think a lot of people also may have, and maybe you're thinking about this now, like you don't drink often or maybe you drink sometimes, but it's like, it's maybe not be in alignment or what you want to do anymore. You don't see the benefits of it as much, but there's just part of the culture that continues to bring you in and drink, and you just haven't made that decision. How did we come up with that decision? Was it something that we hit the bottom with, or was it something that we just figured out what was in alignment with us and what wasn't?
Yeah. So for us, the decision to stop drinking wasn't a hard decision at all. It was actually one of the easiest decisions we've ever made, and you can probably agree. And the reason why it wasn't hard is because we didn't wait until we hit rock bottom, and neither one of us had an addiction to drinking. We both had drank more heavily in the past. Never really, I think for me, I drank a little more heavily like in college and post-college, but it was never an issue. It was never an addiction. And when we met, we were both at a point in our lives when we were just drinking socially here and there. It wasn't something that we were dependent on or that we were like actively seeking to do all the time. And when we came together, we started to realize even more that it wasn't in alignment. Even having one drink, one night out, just felt a little bit off. The next day, in particular for me, I felt a little more anxious, a little more down, a little more emotionally regulated, and also it impacted my sleep. And we know how big I am
how
in sleep.
Important sleep is to Yesi. Do not get in the way of Yesi's sleep. You may get ran over.
Yeah, sleep is so important to me and, to everyone. It's such a fundamental need to function, to be regulated. And even having one drink, I noticed that it would impair my sleep the next day. I just felt like, not just the next day, the symptoms typically carry over for multiple days where you're just playing catch up. Your body's playing catch up when it comes to sleep, when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to regulating, especially women regulating our hormones. That can take some time.
So it sounds like not only that night of going out, drinking, and then cause issues the next day as far as being at your optimal levels, but there's also a continuation that affects you, after that for a period of time. I know before the show you were doing some research on some percentages.
Yes.
What was it telling you scientifically backed? I mean, a lot of, at least what I talk about is from experience, right? Yeah. And I read a lot and I do a lot of research, but really my basis of information is through the experiences that I've had in my life. I know you're very analytical. What were some of those? Spotlights that you saw when you were doing the research?
Yeah. And it's true. We're both very intuitive people, so our intuition tells us when things feel off. Like our body will signal when something's off. But we also know that this is backed by science, so I definitely wanted to share some statistics that I found. So first one, just one drink reduces sleep quality by up to 24%, especially impacting REM sleep, the part that's responsible for emotional processing and memory consolidation. Next one, alcohol increases next day anxiety in up to 30% of people, especially those that have a tendency towards high functioning anxiety, kind of like me. And the third one, it also raises your cortisol, your stress hormone, which interferes with serotonin, and this is what affects your emotional and your mood regulation.
So I think it would be good to dive into each one of those. So the first one again was
The one where having just one drink reduces sleep quality by up to 24%.
so one drink, just one drink by itself, going out socially, not thinking much about it, reduces sleep quality by up to 24%.
Yeah, especially REM sleep, which we know is the part of the sleep that really allows you to like feel well rested the next day.
Right.
This is like the most important part of the sleep cycle, your REM sleep, your rapid eye movement.
And that's the part that helps with memory, helps with performance,
Cognitive function.
So all that. So if you value, recall, you value being at an optimal level, even having that one drink is in alignment, with you for those purposes.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's that one thing, even that one drink. And I'm sure there's a compounding effect as you drink more.
Yeah. And even though we're not experts in this area, we know that even if you're losing sleep for one night or you're not sleeping as many hours for one night, your sleep quality decreases one night. Like, it's not just that one night. Like, it takes, for every hour that you're losing sleep or the quality of sleep, you're catching up that same number of days. So, for example, if I lose 3 hours of sleep tonight that I normally would have, that would take me like 3 days to get back on track. On average, it depends on many variables.
Yeah.
But it's not just that one day, right? It's multiple days that you have to think of.
Right. And to be clear, we don't have any judgment. Somebody drinks, somebody doesn't drink. But if you're looking for that optimal level of performance, it sounds like even a little bit of alcohol has an impact on that.
Yeah.
What was the second stat that you read there?
Alcohol increases next day anxiety in up to 30% of people, especially those that already have a tendency towards high functioning anxiety.
So it sounds like, one reason that we drink is to relax, right? Like, hey, let's have some drinks, let's relax, kick back, let off some steam, whatever it may be. And I know that's part of the culture. So that's, part of why
it's part of the reason why we would drink in the past too, right? Just to be social, to relax, kind of like take off the edge.
Right. And if you already are suffering from that, and you probably start seeing a cycle where it's like, okay, I drink, now I'm, had fun, but now I'm feeling this anxiety that's coming across. Now let me drink again. And I can see how that starts becoming a habitual pattern and habit and easily start locking into that loop.
And that relaxation and sedation is temporary, right? So like you may actually feel more relaxed after you drink. You may feel like the positive, impacts of drinking. But then the next day, that's when, your cortisol spikes and you start to feel the anxiety also spike. You start to feel a little more depressed, a little more regulated. So it could be a temporary relaxation, but there's other like longer term effects that you may not think of when you're
right. And I think that sounds like the solution to that, and we're going to get into some of the stuff after we go through this, is to create a life of intention that you don't desire to escape from, right? So what would be the third one on there?
So, and I briefly mentioned this already, it raises your cortisol, your stress hormone, which interferes with your mood regulation. Especially for women, we have more of a tendency to be emotionally regulated, have hormonal regulation. So when you mix in alcohol into that already, irregulated state, it's only going to make it that much worse.
So I don't know if you've been in relationships where alcohol was a big part of your relationship and maybe ones that it wasn't. I would think back, if you're listening to this now, and rate the kind of the quality of those relationships, right? And I think for us being really intentional about our relationship and how we built it, taking anything out of the relationship that can interfere, because I know, we haven't really fought a lot in our relationship because of the communication and intention behind it. The sometimes that we have, and when that has been brought out more maybe I wouldn't say to the surface because we like addressing things when they come up, but I would say like bubbled in a different type of way that didn't have the ability to come from a place of understanding is when you add something like alcohol into the mix.
Yeah, it's true.
It seems to be like you could have a fire that's here and it burns hot. Actually, fires that, are built right, they burn hot and they don't have huge flames. But you add that accelerant to it and then now you don't have eyebrows or eyelashes.
That's an interesting analogy.
No hair anymore,
but it's true,
right?
Yeah, I feel like we had great communication and that we haven't had a lot of like heated like fights and arguments. But when we have had drinks in the past, like you notice there's patterns will be more easily triggered, right?
Right,
Things that
100%.
wouldn't bother you if you were completely sober, maybe like felt a little more triggering in that moment.
Yeah. And I thinking back to, even if we bring it back to childhood trauma, stuff that we've worked on quite a bit, during our path of the human experience, that childhood trauma to me gets brought out a lot more when I'm under the influence, because it accentuates.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's proven you have lower decision-making ability. You're more captured by your emotions. From when you're working on being on your rock, like in my vision, how I see my life is there's a rock, boom, a big one, kind of like that plant, that vase over there. And then I'm standing on top of that rock. And that's my foundation. These are my goals, my vision for my life, my purpose. These are my intentions. That is what gives me the strength to stand on top of that rock. And that's the foundation that makes it strong. Now, there's a world around me. And the world around me could be calm. It could be peaceful. It could be the sunshine and everything's great. Or it could be a storm, a huge hurricane. It could be a tornado. It could be whatever it may be. And in my vision, for me, my intention very clearly is for me to stand strong on that rock of my values, my purpose, who I am, regardless of what's happening around me. And that's been through this spiritual journey that I've been on over the past few years that has been a big part of that realization. And alcohol does not allow me to stand strong on that rock. And that's something that I've noticed.
Just like it impairs your decision making and also.
And I went through a period of time after I went through a divorce, my dad dying, grandma dying, just being in so much stress, where alcohol was a bigger part of my life, and it really wasn't in alignment. As much as you don't realize, like you don't think about it because you're around. It's like your indication of the 5 people that you're around the most is a direct reflection. You might say, "Oh, that person's this, or this," but it's actually a direct mirror to who you are right now in this period of time. It doesn't define you, but it does show you as a mirror who you are, right? And so those people that you're around, if they're not in alignment with how you envision your life, and drinking's a big part of that, and you want to make that change, that mirror could be a good way to gauge that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think similar for me, I think I'm always very keen to come from a place of integrity and authenticity.
There you are.
And knowing that when I drink, my decision making is impaired and I may not be clear, makes me feel like it's not in alignment with how I want to show up in the world. And I went through college. I mean, I went through a phase in college where I was drinking pretty much every week, not every day, but there were, sometimes consecutive days. And post college, I worked at Accenture where there was like a pretty big drinking culture. So I got a lot of the drinking out of the way, like in my, I would say like, college and early 20s. And by the time we met, it wasn't as much part of my lifestyle anymore. But when I would have a drink, I would notice that I just didn't feel like it was like my most authentic self. Right. I felt like it was like a washed down version of me in a way, or I just didn't feel like it was like me, like my essence.
Right. So question for you, if I'm somebody, I'm a listener right now, I'm like, hey, I only drink sometimes. I do know it's like, I would like to not drink. Like it's, how do I make that commitment though? And why, like, what is that? What do I do to make a commitment not to drink? Because it it's easy to be like, oh, I just don't drink often, right? And that's okay. Like, it's not that you have to not drink, but if this is resonating with somebody listening, what is that process to make that commitment? And why does that matter to make that commitment?
It's a great question. I would say it's always best to start small. So making a smaller commitment, for example, say I'm not going to drink for a month, and then see how you feel after that month, and journal how you feel. Take note of
Track
like
it.
track the differences in your body, your mood, your energy, your sleep, how you're showing up for other people, for yourself, at work. Just keep track of those changes. I say before making a commitment, I'm going to stop drinking forever. That can feel a little bit scary, especially if it's a big part of your lifestyle. So starting small with like 30 days and seeing how that feels. And then you'll gain a lot of information, especially if you're tracking. That's data that then you can use. Okay, maybe I should try for another month, and then maybe I should try for a year. That's kind of how we did it. I believe last year we did like 1 month. We went a couple of months where we didn't drink at all, and just noticing the differences for that small period of time will give you data to make a more informed decision.
So if the decision feels a little bit overwhelming, make a smaller commitment, breaking it down, and then actually tracking how it interacts with you.
Yeah.
Because I do know some really high functioning people, some people that are some of the most incredible human beings as far as being able to just create the vision, the life, everything. The one thing that does get in their life for their decision making process or allow them maybe to unlock another version is alcohol or those type of habits like that. So if I'm thinking about it, what is some of the considerations to taking, if I'm looking deep, how do I make that decision? Like, hey, let's go ahead and do that. Because it's like a lot of people socially, they go out and they drink, right?
Yeah.
Now they feel like they need alcohol to go out and drink.
Yeah.
And I know when I go out, I actually really enjoy going out, being around people that are even drinking when we're out and just experiencing and being actually allowing me to be more present in those moments.
Yeah.
I actually found I can show up better without the alcohol
Yeah.
and have as much fun or more and still keep myself the way I like to be and operate from that alignment. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah. I think asking yourself why is it that you're drinking? Are you doing it to be more social? Are you doing it because you want to belong? You want to feel part of a group? Do you feel like you have to because of your friends? Like really getting down to the reason why you're doing it. Is this something that I'm doing because it's making me feel more or less like me? And then after you figure out why, like, is it making you feel more or less like you doing it? Is it in alignment? I think asking your questions as to why you're doing it. Are you doing it to fit in? Or are you doing it because you actually truly enjoy it?
Right. I know there's been times where like you get like an accustomed to a taste because I liked what it looked like when, I saw people drinking, as a kid watching growing up, a glass with a big ice cube and some whiskey. And like I had to learn how to like that taste. It's like I didn't want a mixed drink.
And some people don't even like the taste and they're doing it. If you don't even like the taste, like.
Yeah. So I guess. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, you want to share your thoughts on that?
Well, no, I just guess it's like becomes one of those things that we feel the social pressure to start doing.
Yeah.
Right. And, I started drinking young when I was, I don't know, like 14 or something.
Yeah, and I didn't have my first drink until college because prior to that, I didn't really feel any social pressure to do it.
I think I was
more
like
of a nerd.
10 when I had my first drink.
But in college, there's, it's so much part of the culture that you feel like some people feel it earlier in their lives depending on your environments, right?
And I'm grateful I started earlier because when I, once I hit that next chapter, I didn't have that urge, or even at the end of high school, I didn't even have the urge to drink that often because I started younger. And thinking back, it did pull me back from a lot, right? But you equate that now, and it's like, if I'm looking to create a life of intention, purpose, I want to like be at my best. Not just sometimes, but because it's like that. What I really resonated with me is it's the 80-20 rule, right? It's like 80% of production in anything is done by 20% of the people or 20% of the actions that happen. And it's those parts of something like this, when we're talking about drinking and everything else, that 20% that it takes you away from being in alignment with your purpose, your goals, your intention, what your negotiables, non-negotiables may be. And I think before even making this decision or taking that step, understanding how to be in alignment with that. And that's what Date Zero, our whole program, is designed and developed to do. And so going through something like that, whether it's Date Zero or some sort of different process, that you understand very clearly on that part of it. And now you're talking about that 20% of your actions make 80% of the difference, right? Once you unlock a certain part. And so once you stop drinking and then you become disciplined and even more alignment. If that calls to you and resonates with you, now you can produce that additional 20 that really makes it 80% of the difference.
Yeah. So what you're saying is when you're drinking, you're showing up as like 80% of yourself. So you're not fully yourself.
No, I would say when you're drinking, that other 20% that makes all the difference in the world, I would say the 20% makes 80% of the difference, if that makes sense, because you can reverse that number either way. And 20% of our actions can create 80% of the difference, or 20% of works, or 80% of the results are done by 20% of the people, right? And there's like this 80-20 rule, and it can work this way or in reverse.
Yeah.
And what I mean is by unlocking that additional 20%, where usually that would be out of alignment or out of focus, and locking that in can unlock a whole different level of success, of creativity, of an alignment, of just being able to be at a different pace than you would be otherwise. And it's almost like you're 1.5 to 2xing the production and the outcome that you would otherwise.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with that being said, what are some of the differences that we notice after we stop drinking?
Some of the different, I would just say, just from a relationship. So if you're in a relationship and you're drinking versus not drinking, improved communication, better in alignment. There's so many great things that you can go do and be more present in, where alcohol doesn't have to be like that easy go-to. Like actually working and enjoying communication, being present in the moment, going to find new fun things to do instead of falling into this circular rhythm of like going out, having drinks, and that be what you do. And then the same repeat, recycle, right? I feel like it's a rhythmic part that we enter into that's almost like a hypnosis that we fall into as human beings that is that thing that holds us back. Right now, I've read this book a couple times, but it's by Napoleon Hill. It's an interview he did with the devil. And it's this incredible book. But one thing that he talks about is like bringing you into this basically hypnotic state. That's what the devil does. And you don't realize that your life is kind of like on this autopilot, and it just continues to go. And I feel like us going out, having drinks, going to dinner, having drinks, like, and that be part of what has to be there for it to bring that connection, you know, and alcohol is a poison. And again, I'm not like anti-alcohol or anti any of that stuff. It's just,
it's scientifically proven to disrupt not just only your sleep and your hormones, but it also disrupts things like your gut microbiome, which we know has huge impact on your skin, hair, immunity.
Right. So our purpose and our goal is to create a movement and to make gratitude, make service, make living in alignment with these things. That be what's cool, right? Like that's the purpose of what we're working towards.
Yeah. In addition to that, so I definitely notice improved sleep, more energy. So like the things that we mentioned in the beginning. But for me, the thing that has made the biggest difference is feeling like I don't have to constantly like catch up. I felt like when I was drinking, like it would set me back days. So just being in a state where I can be, I think you mentioned this, be fully present in the moment and be really authentic and clear. So instead of having to play catch up all the time, I can just be in the present in the moment. And I feel like with that, like with our relationship, with our business, with our coaching, how we show up, allows us to make so much more progress because we're not playing catch up all the time.
What about when we talk about culture? So we said clarity over culture versus culture or whatever, right? So
I was also
what about
going to say
friends?
relationships. I feel like it has allowed us to attract the right kind of relationships into our lives. And for the most part, even before we stopped drinking, I felt like our circle of friends, most of them were not like heavy drinkers. So we were already like kind of in that circle of friends. But even now, I feel there's more clarity as to we know the people that we're attracting in our lives is intentional because they're the people who either are already not drinking as well, or they may be drinking, socially here and there, but they respect our decision. So they're not.
Yeah, I think
they're
that's
not judging us for making the decision not to drink. So it's not about whether they drink or not. It's more about whether they respect our decision and they accept us whether we drink or not. It's not like
and so that's another point, right? So if you go out and it's like that mirror again, and you go out and you're thinking, hey, that sounds good. I'm gonna make that commitment, and then you notice that your friends are making fun of you or giving you a hard time, or you feel pressured socially to drink. That's okay, right? That's okay that you feel that. I would say don't try to fight that, right? And what I mean by that is when we try to resist, that's when it happens more. And I think coming from a place of understanding that as we evolve in life, we're going to attract people that are in alignment with us, and that's going to evolve over time. Yeah. And some of the people that may be close to you or connected to you because that mirror of where you are in that
right. And the more you're connected to yourself, the more you're going to attract people who are in alignment, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
That is the key.
Yeah, so I agree 100%. So taking stock of that mirror and being okay and accepting the fact that it's going to be a change socially when I go out to be like, oh, I don't drink. Those people that you're around know you as drinking.
So how would you, for those that are listening who may be going through that journey or starting that journey, what would be some tips on how to navigate those conversations where they're going out in a social setting and they're being, offered a drink, or they feel like I need to explain themselves? How would you not? What would be your take on that?
Well, one thing that always helps me is I always here's like where we are in life, and sometimes it's like that forest through the trees analogy, where we get stuck being able to see the forest through the trees. I always like to pull myself out of that and look at it from a more global view, so like a 30,000-foot view, and then I gamify things all the time in my mind, right? And so, for me, it's like if I'm gonna go out, and I actually like the challenge of when somebody tries to pressure me into drinking, it just more reaffirms like that I'm not drinking. Yeah. And it's not gonna, and it doesn't matter either way because I'm not gonna drink either way. But I like that on that gamification part, being the outlier of that, where I'm not doing what everybody else is doing. Right. And so, and still involved, present, having a great time. And so what I would say is like, hey, I made the decision not to drink. If you're going to respect that or not, either way, that's okay. But I'm going to be here and I'm going to be present and I'm going to have a good time. Are you? And asking them as a question back, kind of, or just looking at them like, are you okay? That's like another, I do that quite often if somebody's like something that's just way off base. Are you okay? And it just kind of resets the conversation. And, people a lot of times aren't doing things out of spite. They're doing things because maybe they just want to know too.
Yeah, and a lot of people genuinely just want to understand the why.
Yeah.
So I think it's also a good opportunity for you to reflect on your deeper why, but also to give you the space to explain to someone else why you're doing it, right? Because some people genuinely love you and care about you, and they're not doing it to be judgmental. They're like really just curious because in their minds, they're just like, oh, why would you do that? Doesn't really make, it might not make sense until they understand the why. And they're like, oh, usually when I explain to them, most people in my lives have come back with, very loving and very understanding and very respectful.
So there's different elements. What I'm explaining more is like the guys being out, bros fucking giving each other a little bit of a hard time, razzing each other, whatever else. And, if you're a man, you're a man and you're going to stand for what you believe. But sometimes we need a little bit of reinforcement on how to approach those conversations. But always coming from a place of curiosity, it's going to tell you a lot about your friend group as well. If they come from a place of curiosity and like Yesi said, they want to understand the why, those are the people that you want to be around, even if they still drink. Not anything wrong with people that drink or don't drink. it's really is in alignment with you and your intention. Because what I found is, since we don't drink, we notice a lot more people that don't drink. And this is something we've been talking about for a long time, since we've been together, and so we've actually influenced and noticed other people stop drinking over the past couple of years because of our position, has had an influence on that. So what is the ripple effect that can also create with other people when they understand your why behind it, and, if it makes sense, and maybe that resonates with them. So we went through a lot of different parts. I hope this was helpful to our listeners on making decisions around drinking. I would also prompt us, what are habits that we're doing right now that maybe once served us that no longer serve me? And when I take stock of that, it really can start opening your mind and realizing, instead of being on the hamster wheel and just going through the motions every day, zooming out, like what I was talking about from that 30,000 feet, and really being intentional about your life, and looking at all the little aspects of it.
Yeah, I agree. And with that, like also reflecting on how would my body, my mind, my soul react if I either reduce or eliminate some of those habits that may no longer be serving me. Like really reflecting on what does that version of me look like when you get rid of like the fog, or like the habit that may be blurring your vision or impairing your decision making, or just not being your most authentic self. What does my most authentic version of me look like? And how does it not just look like, but how does that feel? Like really reflect on how does that version of me feel?
Yeah. And I would think that version of you feels really good. The highest self is in full alignment, doing the things that you do, work out, eating right, paying attention to your health and well-being. And these decisions that we make have a cumulative impact. And my father died at 60. He didn't die at 60 because he had bad genetics. He died at 60 because he didn't take care of himself. He didn't eat right. He wasn't doing the things that are in alignment with that. And I've learned so much from my dad, both in the things that he taught me because he raised me by himself, and the things that I learned from him by the way that he lived that wasn't in alignment with that. And so that was a gift that he gave me, that I look at it that way, that's very much reinforced within me. And so if drinking or habits that you're engaging in right now is in alignment with your highest self, and you can see that that's going to create a compound effect on your life, create that obligation for yourself to show up the best for you. Yeah. And if maybe your excuse is, I'm spread so thin, I got to show up for all these different people, this is the way I relax or cope with it, I've been there too. And that ends up with catastrophic consequences. So I'd say right now, if you're considering making a decision about one of these habits, what do you really have to lose? Yeah. Start small, work big.
Yeah, know that you don't have to wait until you have an addiction or you hit rock bottom. You can do it now. You can do it at any point. You can choose to live a life with more intention, with more clarity.
And so that concludes our episode of Clarity Over Culture. And I also want to prompt you, if you think this is in alignment with somebody that you know that could utilize this or take some of this information that may resonate with them, please share it. Like, share it, post it on Instagram, create some awareness. Our goal is to create a ripple effect that impacts millions of people, and it starts right here, right now, and with you. So I look forward to seeing you guys next time. We appreciate your time together, and we'll talk soon.
If this episode spoke to your soul,
share it with someone you love, and tag us at the Gynergy Effect. We'd love to connect.
And remember, your energy is your power. Use it with intention.